So I'm Johannes Thumfart, as said before. I'm a senior and postdoctoral researcher at the research group Law, Science, Technology and Society at the Vrije Universiteit Brussels. And I'm also an adjunct lecturer in ethics of international security management at the Berlin School of Economics and Law. And I'm going to talk right now about an issue that is very much a continuation of what Mr. Reichberg has elaborated. The title is Autonomous Systems for Legal and Ethical Control, the next best solution if a universal prohibition of laws fails. So some of the things that I'm going to elaborate in these 20 minutes are elaborated in more depth in these papers. So first there's the explorative paper that I published in AI and Ethics in 2023, and it's called The Democratic Offset, and it asks how democratic states particularly should engage with automation in confrontation with authoritarian regimes who might have an advantage in the development of AI systems. So that is really a very philosophical exploration. The second paper that this is building on is a policy brief that I published with the Sciences Po Chair Digital Governance and Sovereignty, and the title is Autonomous Systems of Normative Control in Military Applications of AI Towards an Ethically and Legally Responsible Industry Standard for Military Technology Made in Europe. So there are several policy arguments that I'm not going to elaborate here about how standard setting for these autonomous systems for ethical and legal control could function. So what is the definition? Autonomous systems for legal and ethical control, that is very much a term that I'm using for a whole group of systems. They are largely hypothetical mechanisms to automatically block weapons when used in an unlawful or unethical way, or alert their operators. The outline of my talk today is I'm going to speak about the project of a universal prohibition of laws and its problems, then about models of autonomous systems for legal and ethical control in the literature, and finally I will add some constructive and critical discussion of these models. The project of a universal prohibition of laws and its problems. The ban on laws is widely supported. There is a civil society consensus. Since 2023, since the campaign to stop killer robots, Mr. Reichberg was also referring to that, that was immensely successful. And it's also accepted among many ethicists and AI and robotics researchers. And the Vienna conference just some days ago, which were stating that we are at the crossroads of humanity, made this very clear that there is a broad consensus in this regard. Also, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for a laws prohibition until 2026. Numerous governments and military directives stress that the use of laws is unacceptable and emphasize the need for human control. However, they have different views on what constitutes human control and which aspects of autonomy should be banned. So international approaches were regularly discussed in the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapon meetings on killer robots from 2014 to 2019, and several meetings of the Group of Governmental Experts, GGE, on emerging technologies in the area of laws. The ban on laws is also based on very good arguments. Some of them we have already heard. Laws, I think the most important argument is the technical argument that laws are unlikely to be able to comply with the IHL criteria of proportionality because this criterion is subjective. And discrimination between civilians and combatants because it is difficult to technically implement this criterion. It has also been argued that having a machine decide about killing a human is irreconcilable with the principle of human dignity. And Mr. Reichberg was referring to that. I think the main problem of this argument is that it's kind of a well-meant anthropomorphism, because these machines actually do not decide. Machines do not make decisions, as little as the falling bomb makes the decision to kill civilians. From a legal perspective, there is the responsibility gap as elaborated by Chingeta. There's simply a question, who is criminally liable when laws kill without human intention, so if something goes wrong. The security argument also plays a role. Laws might cause flash wars, so automated responses might trigger each other and proliferate uncontrollably, of course, to state and non-state actors. Also, there's a good precedent case for a ban on certain weapons. The chemical and biological weapons have been successfully banned. However, a universal ban on laws might fail, because crucial geostrategic actors maintain strategic ambiguity or are explicitly opposing a ban. Most importantly, Russia directly opposes a ban, and even more importantly, it even maintains semi-automated retaliatory nuclear strike system, which is called Perimeter and is already operational since the Soviet Union era, and has led to malfunctions that could have led to very serious mass extinction events. China called for a ban on the use of lethal autonomous weapon systems, but not on development and production. The US agrees with many of the ethical arguments supporting a ban, but insists on that it may be compelled to develop laws in the future if US competitors choose to do so. So there's the deterrence argument. They are doing it, so we must do it also in order to have a credible deterrence. That might also be relevant, as has been elaborated this morning, to the EU's strategic autonomy, that there might be some compelling situation here. Just recently, the US officially urged China, Russia, to declare only humans, not AI, control nuclear weapons. And that is, I think, really the elephant in the room when we are speaking about lethal autonomous weapon systems, that Russia and formerly the Soviet Union maintains automated retaliation systems that could lead to much more dramatic events than individual lethal autonomous weapon systems. Also, a ban on lethal autonomous weapon systems might not address the actual problem of automation creep. There is a pressure to accelerate the so-called OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, act, which tends to removal of humans from the loop. A drastic real-life example is here. Reportedly, Israeli military had 20 seconds to knot off lavender targeting kill lists for airstrikes. These intervals are even shorter regarding non-lethal projectile interception systems such as Patriot, Phalanx, or Mantis, which have a reaction time of about a centisecond. That is what is said about the German Army's Mantis system. With increasing erosion of the human in the loop and even the human on the loop, the problem of laws is just the tip of the iceberg. Semi-autonomous weapons pose similar problems. So the guiding questions are here: how meaningful is human control if it is exerted within centiseconds? Which degree of control needs to be automated and incorporated in the production process in order to guarantee meaningful human control? Again, the control should not be in the moment of targeting only, but in the whole production process. This is precisely the question of autonomous systems for legal and ethical control. There's also an emerging consensus that banning some aspects of autonomy and to promote others to guarantee legal and ethical control. For example, the US has promoted the Declaration on Responsible Military Use of Artificial Intelligence and Autonomy, and as of February 2024, over 50 governments joined the effort. It says their states should consider how to use military AI capabilities to enhance the implementation of international humanitarian law and to improve the protection of civilians and civilian objects in armed conflict. Likewise, the group of governmental experts on emerging technologies in the area of laws suggested in 2023 limiting the duration, geographical scope, and scale of the operation of the weapon system. The GGE also underlined in this regard that laws must not be used if they are incapable of being used in compliance with IHL, including the principles and requirements of distinctions. So the guiding questions are, can and should international humanitarian law criteria be automated, and how should this be done? Existing frameworks are unclear regarding details. This is precisely the question of autonomous systems for legal and ethical control. I'm coming now to models of autonomous systems for legal and ethical control in the literature. The debate about autonomous systems for legal and ethical control is a multidisciplinary discourse involving ethicists, international lawyers, computer scientists, military strategists, and they are presenting different approaches to similar problems. Some are rule-based, some are data-driven, some are hybrid approaches, and they are mostly, but not solely, based on targeting. And as a philosopher and historian, I'm ordering and assessing this discourse from a generalist perspective. I present some examples in the other papers I discussed, about 10 texts. Here it's slightly less. So the first important work that was also mentioned already today is developed by Arkin in 2006, funded by the US Department of Defense, which is important to know, and it was titled Governing Lethal Behavior, Embedding Ethics in a Hybrid Deliberative Reactive Robot Architecture. And what we have here is this ethical governor, so a governor system, which is working together with these constraints implemented in C, and I encircled that in red. So which normative concepts are incorporated into C? The machine's short-term memory includes the rules of engagement, and the machine's long-term memory includes the laws of war and standing rules of engagement to define obligations and prohibitions in terms of modal and deontic logics and apply them to a situation. So you see that here in that very ambitious flowchart by Arkin. Scholz and Gallio, they are autonomous weapons specialists, and they criticized this approach in 2018 in their The Humanitarian Imperative for a Minimally Just AI in Weapons. They criticize Arkin's maximalist approach and propose a minimalistic design. Their min-AI should not be based on machine reasoning regarding prohibitions and duties, but on much simpler blocking mechanisms related to the recognition of concrete features granting protection, such as in the flowchart below, the Red Cross, or in other examples, civilian infrastructure or cultural sites. So you see here this targeting cycle, and the ethical weapon module recognizes the Red Cross symbol and then stops or intercepts the targeting process. There's also a US military strategist called Schuller. That's a German name, so it's very difficult to pronounce in English for me. I maybe would call him Schuller, but probably Schuller. He published Warriors and War Algorithms Leveraging Artificial Intelligence to Enable Ethical Targeting in 2019. He points to the fact that complex simulation and prediction programs are already used in the military. For instance, the DoD's Joint Technical Coordinating Group for Munitions Effectiveness. It provides software that models the accuracy and explosive yield of the warhead, guidance, and fusing combinations found in the Joint Munitions Effectiveness manuals. It also provides vulnerability data for potential targets based on their size and construction. Also, there's the Digital Precision Strike Suit Collateral Damage Estimation program. Its algorithm essentially produces a casualty estimate for decision makers by merging the output of GMEM weaponizing programs against collateral concerns, primarily buildings refined by population and population density data. So the model of Sculler looks like this. He advocates in favor of an integrated system that develops scenarios and delivers optimized results. So that he calls a consolidated weaponeering and collateral damage estimate. The algorithm has simultaneous access to multiple data sets, target vulnerability, weapons effects, non-combatant facilities, and population density. The algorithm simultaneously develops probabilities of achieving target damage and avoiding collateral damage. The analyst has access to multiple scenarios, can refine most promising with the specific tactical intelligence. At the end, there's an optimized result. The decision maker approves the scenario with the greatest probable damage to adversary with least amount of probable collateral damage. This account by Sculler is developed further by Zure-Quick and van Engels in their 2023 paper, Model of a Military Autonomous Device Following International Humanitarian Law. Their model consists in predicting the relationship between military advantage, how much advantage is gained from attacking a specific target, and incidental harm, collateral damage caused by both foreseeable and indirect effects of an attack. The system includes several modules with specific tasks in the reasoning part, most importantly the harm minimization filter, the proportionality test, and the Article 57 filter, so that relates to precautions in attacks. The generated output consists of ordering decisions regarding their degree of compliance with international regulations. In a turn away from the present trend, they promote a hybrid approach that is data-driven regarding the perception tasks that they summarize as cognitive part, and rule-based regarding the reasoning part, which is informed by IHL and other norms. So this is very important here to reach the target of explainable AI, to have a rule-based system that can be really also traced back and not a data-driven black box approach. So here's the flowchart from Zure-Quick and van Engels, and you see in the upper half the cognitive part, which is fed by general circumstances and signal intelligence and military goals. And this is this cognitive data-driven part, and you have below the rule-based reasoning part, which is informed by treaties. There you have the treaties fulfillment module, the goals fulfillment module, the harm minimization filter, the proportionality test, the Article 57 filter, and that leads to a decisions ordering, which decisions are the most proportionate in this sense. I come to constructive and critical discussion of this issue. So my suggestions are: the debate is so far focusing on international humanitarian law and use in bello categories, such as distinction and proportionality. But what about use ad bellum and use post bellum principles, so right to war and right after war, such as the prohibition on wars of aggression and the annexation of territory? Also, this is important, military weapons are often used against domestic population and not necessarily only in war. What about securing civil and political rights, such as the right to peaceful protest, through blocking mechanisms regarding the use of force against protesters? So taking this together, it leads to 8 tasks, which is certainly not conclusive, that list, and they range from complex to more complex up to impossible tasks, because there's really no easy task here. So it starts with the recognition of cultural and religious sites, which is something that could be mastered somehow with geolocation, but we know that this is difficult. I will come to that later. The differentiation between civilian and military infrastructure, which is also difficult because civilian infrastructure is often used by military. The recognition of densely populated areas, where one could say autonomous weapon systems should not operate at all. The recognition of protected symbols, such as the Red Cross and the Red Crescent, and blocking mechanisms regarding the use of force against domestic protests, blocking mechanisms regarding the defense of annexed territories, and differentiation between civilians and combatants, and assessment of proportionality. What is problematic here is that the literature is focused on the most difficult tasks, which are the least likely to be accomplished because they are related to subjectivity. So I would suggest to take an engineering approach and start with the complex but not impossible tasks, hopefully. Some of the many remaining problems are, to which extent does signal jamming make geolocation-related tasks impossible? How to find the right balance between false positives and false negatives? Military personnel will not tolerate overblocking. Human rights activists will not tolerate underblocking. If machines act predictable according to certain rules, this makes them also vulnerable to adverse engineering, right? If there are some signs that block weapons automatically, then opponents will imitate those signs and make use of that knowledge. Also, this is a big question: is this legal washing or ethics washing? Is this technological solutionism? Does this lead to the fact that we have the illusion that the ethical dilemma of war are taken care of by technology, which can be outsourced to machines? This can lead to moral de-skilling of human agents. So it is important to make sure that these models enhance human legal and ethical reasoning rather than pretending to make it obsolete. And of course, that is a remaining question: how can subjective criteria related to proportionality be quantified so that machines can understand them? Also, importantly, the fog of war affects data. For instance, the population density data collected in peace times might not reflect the density in war times. To conclude, systems of normative control are no perfect or final solution. Other pathways to regulate laws should be continued. Systems of automated control are one way among many to guarantee human control, because it is still humans who conceptualize weapons. So if we understand the weapon cycle on a broader scale, then we see this implementation, this engineering solution is just one part of human control. So please, if you have any questions, post them. And this research that I presented right now is currently under review and will be published soon. And you can read further at this explorative paper about the role of autonomous weapon systems in democracies that I mentioned, and Sciences Po policy brief, which elaborates how standard setting should be accomplished. Many thanks for your attention, and sorry for the